I'm going to warn you now, the story's a bit long and quite a doozy. This happened 6 years ago. I'm 27 now. I apologize if there's some small details missing or that I don't remember. I had gotten out of a 3-year relationship that didn't end particularly well. I wanted to change the scenery, so I decided to try my luck on this site called OkCupid. I know. Terrible idea. I'm well aware of that now, but hindsight is always 20/20. In my mind, most of the dating sites are a cesspool of catfish, creepy people, and desperate people. To my surprise, I actually went on several decent dates. No red flags, creeper vibes, or any weird feelings. Luckily, I made my mom aware of what I was doing, so whenever I'd go on a date, she'd know where I was and when I was going to be home. Mama didn't raise no idiot, right? Wrong. This is when I came across Dennis's profile. He seemed chill, kinda cute, and somewhat interesting. I decided to send him a message. He was playful and had a sarcastic sense of humor, which was right up my alley. So I decided to give him a shot. We met at a coffee shop and had some engaging conversations. Dennis was 5'9", normal built, balding with reddish hair and glasses. He definitely gave off some nerd vibes. He started off by asking, "What are you looking for?" I gave my normal response. I want someone who's sweet and caring, but also funny and intelligent. Something along those lines. Nothing groundbreaking. I realized later that giving this sort of response was the beginning of the end. Dennis and I went on a couple more dates. I started to fall head over heels for him fast. He was sweet, understanding, caring, worked out, and took care of himself. He was everything I wanted in a guy. It was difficult to understand why he was single. Since I was falling for him so quickly, we agreed that we would be exclusive. Everything was going smoothly until about 2 months into our relationship. That's when shit started to hit the fan. For the last month, I had been pushing him to let me hang out at his place and to meet his roommate. Every time I pushed the subject, he would make an excuse why we couldn't. My roommate's crazy, it's not a good time, he works opposite schedules than me, etc. It was always something. At some point, we made plans to go to a club one evening. I was dressed up, ready to go, waiting for him. He ended up not answering his phone for a couple hours. I thought his phone must have died since whenever I would send him a message, it would never say delivered, for those of you that are Apple users. I ended up deciding to go to his place to see if he would open his door. He lived about 15 minutes away from me in an apartment complex, and it was the middle of the winter. It was so cold. I knocked on his door, no answer. While heading back to my car, look who decides to show up. None other than Dennis himself. And guess who he was with? Yes, you're correct, another woman, which I later found out was his long-term girlfriend, Jessica. I quickly made my way over to him, and the look on his face was fucking priceless. His face deadpanned as soon as he saw me. He whispered something to the girl that he was with, and she made her way inside. He came over to me and was speechless at first. "I'm very surprised to see you here." "Really? We had plans, remember? I wanted to see if you were home." "I do remember. My phone died, so I didn't receive any of your texts and lost track of time. We were at my friend's birthday party." "Who's the girl?" "My roommate." "I thought your roommate was a guy." "He is. She's my other roommate and a very good friend." Mind you, I'm a very skeptical person, and alarm bells were definitely going off in my mind, in accordance to my parents' numerous warnings. However, Dennis is the sort of person who is very good at talking himself out of situations. He was an excellent liar, and being naive and the insecure person I was, I believed him. We ended up going to the club after I waited outside in my car for almost an hour. I didn't think about it much since I was getting what I wanted, and nothing was said about his girl roommate. Over the next month, I kept pushing Dennis to meet his family and his other guy roommate. He eventually caved and brought me to see his mother. It was an extremely odd experience. We talked about books, and some of Dennis's friends, and I made a snide remark about how Dennis's guy roommate was fucking nuts. Dennis's words. And they both gave me the strangest glances. This would all make more sense in about a month or so. Eventually, I started to realize Dennis' stories weren't adding up, and I started seeing holes in his stories. He would only see me on Tuesday and Thursday evenings because he worked a lot of overtime. He would never be flexible or change his mind, or even allow me to attempt to change his mind. If he was late coming to see me, which started to happen frequently, he would send me screenshots of his work and his vehicle in line for getting washed, or would send me screenshots of his bathroom saying he just wanted to freshen up. When I asked him for a picture of him in that moment, of him in the bathroom mirror, he declined. He refused to send me any pictures of himself, proving that he was where he claimed to be. He would also take unusually long bathroom breaks at my house after sex, like 20-minute long breaks. I know, another huge alarm bell. Everything came to a head about a month or so later. I told Dennis I wanted to go somewhere with no phone service so that we could truly spend time together without technology being a distraction. He agreed, and we ended up making plans to spend 2 or 3 days in Canada. It was still early on in our relationship, about 4 months, and my mom wanted to make sure I was safe, so she decided to take down Dennis's driver's license and made a copy of it, as well as his license plate. The trip ended up relatively uneventful until the last evening in the hotel room. I'm not sure if it was on purpose, or if he was actually asleep. Dennis ended up rolling over to my side, pulling me closer and saying, "I love you, Jessica." This made my blood run cold. I was so upset. Tears started to blur my vision, and I got up out of bed. My parents were right all along. He was a liar and a cheat. Did I break it off? No, of course not. That would make too much sense. I was naive and desperately in love with him. I didn't want to admit to myself that I had been played or that I was a side chick. So I acted as if nothing was wrong and that I didn't hear what he said that night. Of course, he didn't get rid of the aching feeling that I had for several weeks. I began to have bad anxiety and panic attacks on my way to school because of a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. Dennis was constantly lying to me, and I mean constant. It was so bad, I ended up starting to feel really angry. I let the feeling simmer for a couple days until I decided to do something about it. When realizing that you were right all along and things weren't just a strange coincidence, it's very bittersweet. On a freezing March day, after an exhausting day at school, I wanted to get rid of the nagging feeling in the back of my mind, once and for all. I decided to head over to Dennis's apartment complex to see if he was still lying to me about living in an apartment with a girl roommate. I got out of my car in the parking lot. I was shaking. I didn't know if it was from anxiety or from the anger that started to bubble up below the surface. Was he lying to the girl roommate? You bet your sweet ass he was. I knocked on his door and hid myself from the view of the peephole. He answered the door, and his girl roommate was behind him. I came around the corner to look at him with an emotionless face and say, "Wow." I turned on my heels and walked away, only to find out as I got back to my car that I had locked myself out of the car on a cold March day in the middle of winter. I was so distracted by my rage and sadness that I didn't realize that I left both my keys and phone in my car. I'm such an idiot. I was beside myself. I didn't know what to do. I locked my phone in the car with my keys. How the fuck could you do that? I was so angry at myself for being a moron. Not only that, I was in the parking lot of my cheating ex-boyfriend. With nothing else to lose, literally, I walk back to Dennis's apartment and knock on their door. Jessica answers and I beg to use her phone to call AAA. Jessica surprisingly agrees to let me use her phone. The entire time, Dennis is agitated and keeps walking around. At one point, he even went outside with a coat hanger in an attempt to unlock my car, but to no avail. During that time, I took advantage of me being alone with Jessica to get some information on her, like how long they've been together, where did they meet. I was shooting 20 questions at her rapid fire before Dennis came back in. By the end of it, I had more than enough information to prove that Dennis was not who he says he was. Everything started to make sense and the puzzle pieces were connecting. One of the biggest aha moments for me was when we both were talking about being in a relationship with him on Facebook. It turns out this sly motherfucker created 2 different Facebook accounts to ensure that he was in a relationship with both of us, only to block the other girl on that account, guaranteeing that neither of us would ever come across the Facebook account. A couple years ago, I stopped at a Walmart super early in the morning after leaving a friend's house to pick up a pet carrier. As I'm standing in the pet aisle deciding on my purchase, a very large and kind of sweaty man walks around behind me and comments on my butt. I was wearing yoga pants. I am uncomfortable but tried to be polite when he asked me for my number. I apologize and tell him that I have to leave. However, as I'm checking out at the register, I see the same man again, making me even more uncomfortable. I try to hurry out of the store to get to my car as quickly as possible, when again, the same man approaches my window and asks me if he can take me out. I am beginning to get nervous at this point, and I quickly tell him, no thank you, and lock my doors and begin to drive away. I had barely driven for a few minutes away from the store when I noticed the same guy is now following me in his car. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt and just speed up and change lanes, but he does the same exact thing. I finally lose him by pretending I'm gonna turn, and once he gets behind me and the light starts to change to red, I jump back onto the road and finally lost him. In hindsight, I probably should have reached out to the authorities. It was in the day, but rather early in the morning, and there were not many people around. So creepy Walmart stalker, I hope that we never meet again. This is a story of a dumb decision I made in February 2019 while in a Tennessee Walmart. At the time I was 12 years old and had been visiting Tennessee for the first time for a dance competition that I was competing in. On this night it was around 11 p.m. and my mom, grandma, and I had to pick up some things from Walmart for the competition the next day. We had just finished dinner, so almost as soon as we had gotten in there, my mom had to use the bathroom. She was in there for a while, so I was just waiting outside with a shopping cart, surfing Instagram on the crappy Walmart Wi-Fi. My grandma was waiting in the car. She had been in the bathroom for 10 minutes, and I was growing more and more bored, so I decided that I would start surfing the aisles around where we were, just to keep my short attention span in check, hoping that I would find something shiny to distract me. I turned the third aisle, and once I was halfway through, a shorter man with a plastic Walmart bag in his hand rounded the corner and started slowly following me. I didn't get a good look at him, but I could definitely tell he was there. It wasn't until he was about a foot behind me that I realized that he was way too close for comfort. I started getting tunnel vision and my eyes felt tingly. I decided that I should get out of there and started walking away as normal looking as possible. Once I got a couple feet in front of him, I basically started running, winding quickly between aisles, trying to lose him. I was trying to find an aisle with people, but every time I would get to a small group of people, they would walk away. I would stop in an aisle thinking I had lost him, and then he would turn the corner, so I would keep running. I finally lost him once I got to the shoe section. Again, this place was unfamiliar, totally backwards to the Walmarts that I was used to. I didn't know how to get back to the bathrooms, so I started to follow the walls until I made it back to the bathrooms after about 20 minutes had passed. I parked the cart back outside and went into the bathrooms looking for my mom. I thought she was still in there, so I propped myself against the wall and pulled out my phone. 6 missed calls. My mom had been calling me the entire time, and she was freaking out. I answered, almost in tears, and she started screaming at me, "Where are you?" I vaguely explained to her what happened, too overwhelmed and panicky to explain in detail. She and my grandma, whom she had called to help look for me, met up with me in the bathrooms. They told me that people had been calling my name over the speaker, but it was probably when I was in the bathroom, that's why I didn't hear it. We reported the guy to the employees, paid for our stuff, and left. I made a very dumb decision during this encounter. So if you ever find yourself in a similar situation as mine, which I hope you don't, Abandon your shopping cart. Whatever items you have picked up, you can always pick them up later. Tell someone that you're being followed. It's always better to be safe than sorry. I should have turned to face him. There were people around, and if he would have tried to do anything, they would have heard me scream. As dark as that sounds. Most of the time, when people face their attackers and show bravery, they get caught off guard. So creepy guy who followed me around in the Tennessee Walmart, let's never ever meet again. While reading through some stories on Let's Not Meet last night, I remembered that I had an experience a few months back that sort of fits. I'll try to give a short version, since I tend to ramble on forever if I don't stop myself. I had taken my grandma's car to Walmart to buy groceries for her. She's elderly, gotten to the point where she can't drive, and my wife and I help her out with stuff like this. I went in, bought all the stuff on her list, come back out, and get into my car. I had already turned on my car and was going through the podcast on my phone to find something to listen to, and since it was a hell hot Alabama summer, I had the window cracked until the air conditioner finally got cool. Here's where the weird shit comes in. I'm sitting there on my phone, not paying attention to anything else like a damn idiot, when someone knocks on my window. I look up and saw a cracked out, scabbed all over his face meth zombie standing there, with another similar looking dude standing right behind him. First dude was your typical meth head. Second dude was huge. Just wanted to add that. I said, "What's up?" "You left your keys in your door," Thing One replies. "What?" I say, confused because the car was obviously running. "You left your keys in the door," he said again, jabbing with his finger at my door. "Nah man," I replied. "The car's running." I didn't add, "You fucking idiot," but I felt like that would have been appropriate. "Just open the damn door, man," Thing One screams at me, totally dropping the whole key in your door, trying to be helpful act, and tried the door handle. Thank God the car automatically locks when you turn it on. I mean, dude screamed. It was fucking crazy. "That's not gonna happen, man," I said, much more calmly than I would have thought I would have been in a situation like this. The weird thing is, I never tripped out about it, just answered the guy, told him he was wrong. He stared at me for a few seconds, then turned to his silent, gigantic buddy and said, "Fuck it, I tried," while shrugging his shoulders. They then walked off, probably in search of another possible victim. I backed out my grandma's car and left, thinking about this odd interaction. Then it hit me what they are most likely trying to do. I know I sound stupid, but the whole thing happened so fast, and I was just reacting, you know? Then I called the cops. The police station was within a quarter of a mile of the Walmart, so hopefully they caught those idiots. That's it. I know this isn't nearly as awful or scary as most stories on here, but I figured I'd post it. This happened a few days ago, and I'm extremely shaken up. Some backstory. I live on the second floor of a 3-level apartment. We have a crawl space that connects all of the apartments. We're not sure why it's there, and none of us would attempt to go inside, so we felt pretty safe. The other night the sun was setting, but it wasn't pitch black out yet or anything. I was walking through my living room when I see a short woman on the fire escape looking through my windows. This was extremely bizarre, considering it was still semi-light out, and she had literally got onto our fire escape somehow. We have 2 windows that the fire escape reaches. She was looking through both of them, but couldn't see me. I crawled on the ground, and my heart was racing as I saw her try to open one of the windows. I didn't know what the fuck to do, because my phone was in the other room. After what seemed like an eternity, she finally left. I went into my room to get my phone to text my landlord and call the cops. I came back into the living room and was looking through the windows to see if I could locate her, when all of a sudden I hear a weird noise coming from the ceiling. We have one of those tile ceilings, made out of separate slabs of cork. I look up to see one of the slabs lifted up, and 2 eyes staring at me. I have no clue how she got into the crawl space so quickly, but I grabbed the nearest thing next to me, which was a broom, and started hitting her with it through the ceiling. I called the cops and she crawled away. They showed up and searched the place, but didn't find her until a few days later when she was on someone else's fire escape. The cops say she was definitely on some hard drugs and that she was violent towards them. I'm glad she's gone, but whoever the crazy lady was that came through the ceiling, let's not meet again. For the past 2 months or so, I've been experiencing people trying to get into my home. Now, I wouldn't say that they tried forcefully, but if it's not the doorknob being messed with, I'm hearing the back porch door being slammed. I haven't notified the police, mainly because it wouldn't happen regularly, and just thought it would be a waste of time, seeing that all the evidence I have is noises that I've heard. But last night's encounter might have been the nail in the coffin, as I'm generally creeped out by it this time. So here it goes. It was maybe around 11:30 p.m. I was laying in bed, enjoying another night after work, watching TV, and that's when I hear a slight tap coming from my brother's window. This made me a bit tense since the other occurrences happened earlier in the night, but this time it was way later than usual, and I had never heard tapping on the window before. I stayed quiet, and maybe not even 5 minutes later, I hear it again, but this time it's coming from my room. Some time passes by, and that's when I hear a sudden knocking coming from the front door. I continue to stay in silence, hoping that they would just leave, and that's when I hear them messing with the doorknob. A few attempts are made, and then everything goes silent once again until they start harmonizing with each other. This is when I decided to pull out my phone and record. After that, I guess they decided to leave for good, as I didn't have the guts to interact with them. All I know is that things are getting freakier than I could ever imagine, and I don't even know how to begin to get rid of them. So this happened to me a couple years ago, when my now husband and I were living in a townhouse that was in a pretty decent area. My husband was working the third shift as a corrections officer at our local corrections facility, and I was working as a waitress. It was an unusually warm night in the middle of March, so I took advantage of it and decided to take my husband's 80-pound Alaskan Malamute Husky mixed dog on a quick walk around the neighborhood near our complex. We get to the end of the street that leads into the complex we live in, and across the street is a Marathon gas station. I noticed as the dog, Luke, stopped to relieve himself that there was a guy across the street at the gas station with a case of beer in his hands. I had my phone out texting a friend and looked up to notice the guy was near a stop sign, also relieving himself on the sign. I felt really awkward and instantly put my phone away and led Luke down the street on our path. At this point, I think the guy noticed us, and he crossed the street to where Luke and I had just been. I hear him walking a few feet behind me, and just keep my head staring at my phone with Luke glued to my hip. After about 10 seconds, I hear the guy's steps getting closer. Luke realizes there's someone behind us and stops dead in his tracks. Mind you, he's a big dog compared to my 5'2" self, but I can handle him pretty easily, as he was very well trained by my husband. I noticed his ears were perked up, and his tail was straight up. I was glad that he was aware of our surroundings, but I still wanted to keep moving away from this guy. I just got the weirdest feeling. This guy finally catches up to us, so I tighten my grip on Luke's leash and pull him closer to me and step onto the grass to allow the guy to pass us and to keep Luke out of his way. Does this guy keep going and pass? Nope. When I thought he was about to pass us, I shouted out a small apology because Luke was pulling on his leash a little, trying to investigate this guy, and most people did get intimidated by him just because of his size. The guy stops and just stares at me for a minute, long enough for me to smell the cigarettes and booze rolling off of him, and notice that he's probably in his mid to late 20s, dark hair, scruffy looking, and just dirty. He smiles and then finally notices Luke trying to get at him and asks, "Cute dog, what's his name?" Instead of making up a name, I just said, "Luke." He then proceeds to ask me if he could pet my dog, and before I can give an answer, he leans down and starts petting Luke's head. Luke did not like that. Luke jumped at him as a warning, and that guy backed up, chuckling. I apologized and mentioned that he was very protective and made up a lie that he was trained by my dad's former canine unit. My dad was a software developer. Instantly, I saw this guy's face change. I don't know what to call it, but it looked like he was put off by it. He asked me what my name was, and I gave him a fake name. He then asked if I lived around here, and I said that I was visiting a friend of mine for the weekend. He made a sudden step towards me, and I'm not even lying when I say this. I've never heard my husband's dog growl in the 5 years that I've been with him, but the sound that came out of my dog sounded like something from nightmares. Luke's hair was spiked up on his spine, and he was throwing himself on his back legs, kicking at the guy with his front legs. He put himself completely between myself and the guy, and was snapping at him. This freaked the dude out, so much that he stumbled backwards, nearly dropping his beer. He quickly said, "Well, have a nice night, cutie," and stumbled off down the road. When I say that my heart was pounding, it was deafening. I grabbed Luke's leash so hard and sprinted between the buildings until I got back to the townhouse. I locked the doors and collapsed by the front door. Luke was in my face the whole time, kissing me and whining. This dog is the sweetest and most gentle creature I have ever met, and hearing him growl and seeing him react the way he did made me realize even more that I needed to get out of that situation, and fast. In late June, my boyfriend and I, both 19, were headed back from Walmart in his town. We live an hour apart, and I was visiting. I was driving on somewhat of a back road, and there's a 4-way stop. Across from us was what looked like a work truck, parked behind another car and flashing its brights. Nobody else was at the intersection, so I decided to go ahead and keep driving. As soon as I pulled out, a car came speeding, somewhere around 90 miles per hour in a 30 mile per hour zone, and almost T-boned my car on the passenger side. Luckily, I sped up and got out of its way, and the car swerved and stopped on the side of the road and flashed its hazards. We were freaked out. Maybe it wasn't the right thing to do, but I kept driving because no one was hurt, probably just shaken up. So we keep driving, and my boyfriend is guiding me through the roads, and we were talking about how bizarre it was that we didn't even see or hear that other car. Then I noticed there's a car behind us. It's probably 1,000 feet behind us, so I didn't think anything of it. Then it keeps getting closer and closer. Finally, the car is on my ass. Once he's on my ass, he turns on his extremely bright lights and nearly blinds me. We realize that it's the work truck that was across the intersection. I ducked down out of the way of my rearview mirror that was blinding me, so I could see the road and keep driving, even speeding up a little. My boyfriend tells me that maybe we should pull over. Maybe someone was hurt and they were trying to flag us down. But we're on a back road with absolutely no light posts and nowhere to pull over that's well lit. Eventually, my boyfriend had to hold the wheel for me because I couldn't see at all. My vision was blurry and spotty. I started to pull into a neighborhood, but the truck started passing me and we almost got into an accident. The neighborhood was dark, of course. The truck slows down to a stop and backs up so it's directly behind us, still on the main road while we parked in this neighborhood. The driver starts shining a flashlight at my car, mostly at me, then goes over to my boyfriend. After it gets to him, he shuts off the light and the truck slowly pulls off and leaves. My boyfriend and I were shaken up, and once I regained my vision, I drove back to his apartment, wary of all the cars around us. We told his dad about it, and he said it's a good thing that we didn't get out of the car. People get murdered all the time from this stuff. We thought it was just so weird, but thinking back on it, the driver probably only saw me and targeted me, and then once he realized that there was 2 people in the car, they didn't want to deal with it and left. They wanted me, it seems like. What do you think? This just happened. I got off work and went to my mom's to help her and my dad set up their new Alexa TV that they had just got. It ended up taking a while because we had to run to the store to grab an adapter, so I didn't leave their house until 8 p.m. And by the time I got home, which I recently moved into a few weeks ago and live alone, it was closer to 9 p.m. and pitch black. I had my hands full of a few things that I forgot at my parents' since I stayed with them for a few months before I found my place. Anyway, I'm walking up the sidewalk to my apartment when I hear him calling out to me. Hey, excuse me. Hello? Hey. I have one headphone in, listening to YouTube stories, and I try to pretend like I didn't hear him. Not to be rude, but because it was pitch black outside, and I had been up since 6 a.m. and was dead tired, I don't like small talk, and I'm bad at it. Eventually, I turn around, and we introduce ourselves. Immediately, the hairs on my arm prickle, and I get this feeling in my gut. This guy is sizing me up. He wants to know where I live, so he can break into my place, rob me. It's just something I know. It's not even a feeling, but a fact. The entire time we're talking, maybe 10 minutes, his hands are in his pockets, his hood is up, and he keeps looking around like expecting to see someone. Granted, it's cold, but we live in Arizona, so it's not that cold. But this also puts me on edge. Then he begins asking about me, how long ago I moved in, and which unit I'm in. He's obviously going to see which unit I'm in when I walk into it, so I just tell him. He makes small talk for a few minutes and then asks if it's just me. I explain, oh no, I've got my 2 dogs. I go on to say how big they are, how protective they are, and how they are roaming freely in my apartment while I'm at work, which is all true. He asks if I take them on walks and how often. Basically, how often do you leave your apartment empty? I explained to him that I have to be careful because, while my dogs love me and act like big babies with me, they are very protective, so going out is a challenge because I have to be careful about people coming up to us and how my dogs react to them. I turn the conversation around to ask which unit he's in, how long he's been there, who he lives with. He seems uncomfortable and gives me vague answers, waving his hand behind him and saying, that one. He seems uncomfortable about me trying to clarify which apartment he's in, so he tapers off the conversation and we say our goodbyes. I unlock my door, give my dogs the command to bark, which they do, and it's loud and vicious sounding. I immediately give them love and call my mom, give her his name, what he looks like, his vague portrayal at what apartment he's in, and a reminder of her panic phrase, so if I ever say it, she knows to calmly end the call and send the cops. Now I'm just sitting in my apartment freaking out on every little sound with my dogs piled on top of me. I'm going to call the non-emergency police and ask them to do a drive-by to make me feel safer. Update. I'm sitting on my couch replying to comments. It's 9:30 on a Friday night and I'm hearing the softest knocking. If I weren't 3 feet from the front door, I wouldn't have heard it. I have both my dogs out, my pit bull barked, and everything is locked up tight. Obviously I didn't answer, but I don't have a peephole, so I have no idea who it was. Am I overreacting? Second update. I just got home and I noticed the light on in my car. The windows are up and the passenger side is locked, and you can only open the driver's door a certain way, so I don't see anyone opening it. And his number is on my window, on the outside, with a message saying text me. On the back of the paper is information about a court date and such. I'm going to call the non-emergency police and add this to my report, and I've updated everyone keeping an eye on me. So yeah, I'm still freaked out. I decided to use a Starbucks gift card I got for Christmas this morning before class. I live in a college town, and I wanted to go to the Starbucks closest to the campus so I wasn't late to class. This one doesn't have a drive-thru though, so I had to walk in. When I walk up to the front door, a man and woman were sitting at the outdoor table, and they had both made eye contact with me. I remember thinking it was kind of odd because they looked me up and down. Plus it was like 30 degrees out there, and there were open chairs inside. Come to think of it, they didn't have drinks or anything. I walk inside and order my drink like normal, but I could feel them staring at me through the front window. Once I got my drink, I started to walk out to my car, passing the 2 people. I heard them both stand up and start walking behind me without saying a word. I got scared at this point and put my car keys between my knuckles just in case I needed to protect myself. I sped up and got into my car as fast as I could and locked all the doors. Not even 2 seconds later, the woman knocked aggressively on my driver's side window, essentially making me damn near piss myself. The man was right next to her with a straight face, hands in pockets, looking through the windows of my car as if he was searching for something he wanted. I cracked the window a centimeter so she couldn't fit her hand in or anything, and asked her if she needed something. She told me to roll down to my window more. I said it was really cold, so I'm going to keep it up. She then asked me if I could give her some money, and it seemed like she was insisting, not so much asking. I just stumbled over my words and told her that I paid with a gift card, and that I was a poor college kid who didn't have much cash, which was true, but it sounded like an excuse. The man started to look confused and angry at me, and then yelled at me to get out of the car. That's when I just noped the fuck out, and drove as fast as I could. I'm glad I got out of there, but they scared the crap out of me. I probably shouldn't even talk to them at all. So to the people that tried to rob me at Starbucks, let's not meet again. So a bit of a backstory. I'm 18 female, from the UK. This happened in February 2019. I was 17 at the time. I just got set up on a semi-blind date. We had seen photos of each other by a mutual friend, and this guy, we would call him Cameron. He was 19. Cameron seemed like your average guy, maybe a little too into video games and anime and stuff, but overall, nothing that my friend told me about him seemed off in any way. Our mutual friend gave us each other's phone numbers, and we texted for a night and decided to meet up at Starbucks the next day, since we were both free. I never like to meet new people this soon, but I figured since Cameron knew my friend, it couldn't possibly go wrong. How mistaken I was. I arrived slightly early, ordered my coffee since I never like guys to feel like they have to buy it for me, and I parked up in a seat facing away from the door and pulled out my book. I'm maybe there for about 15 minutes chilling out, and I get a text saying he's here. So I'm like, great, I'm at this table. I feel a presence over my shoulder, and I turn my head slightly in acknowledgement. Before I even get a chance to squeak out a hello, his lips latch onto my neck, and he starts sucking on my neck. Now, I don't like people touching my neck at the best of times. I'm very ticklish and get super uncomfortable by people touching my neck. A few times when I've had massages or hair treatments, I had to hold in my discomfort. This dude latches on my neck like a leech. He smells horrendous. Kind of like dust personified. I freak out and elbow him in the chest to get him the hell off of me. He lets go and looks at me with a weird expression on his face and laughs in deadpan, really creepy, and I start to become even more alarmed. I asked him what the hell he was trying to do, and he says, I thought it was cute. Cute in what world? I try to have a conversation. I feel like first impressions don't mean anything. Let's try to give him a chance. But he's just creepily staring at my chest. He's like, wow, I didn't know Asians had boobs like those. I better not let you go. That's a direct quote. I can't make this shit up. I'm more distinctly uncomfortable, but I just don't want to run away. But he's giving me these weird vibes. So I go into the ladies' room and wait for someone else to come in. I ask her to help me get out undetected. I don't want this man following me home or some shit. She of course agrees and lends me her hat and scarf. It's February in the UK after all. We come out of the bathroom together, and she manages to help sneak me out the back door of Starbucks without him noticing me. He asked my friend where I went off to, but I told my friend never to mention me again. I was too terrified. I know I probably didn't behave well and should have told him I was leaving, but I was just honestly scared. I was around 13 years old and at the shopping center with my parents. I wanted to go off on my own for a while and wander around by myself, and my parents agreed. After a little while, I stopped by a woman in casual clothes. She told me that she was an undercover cop and I was suspected of shoplifting. Because I was young, I was terrified. I didn't ask her for ID or anything like that. I didn't know I could question authority. She asked me to look through my bag, and I let her, insisting that I hadn't stolen anything. She asked me how old I was, who I was there with. Then she asked me something that still sends a chill down my spine. Are your parents expecting you to go home with them tonight? I told them of course they were. Why wouldn't they be? She then insisted that I had to follow her to go figure out the shoplifting thing. I went. She was leading me towards the exit. By the grace of God, before we got there, we bumped into my dad. He asked what was going on, and I told him. As I was explaining the situation, the woman got on her phone and was talking to someone, and says things like, "Oh, this isn't the right girl?" Then hangs up and says, "Sorry, wrong person," and abruptly walks off. My dad stood there dumbfounded. When my mom found out about the situation, she was really unimpressed by the way the undercover cop handled the situation. She took me to management the next day and complained to them about how I was treated by the undercover cop. And the woman answers with, "We don't employ undercover cops." I have no idea what this woman planned for me, but I thank my lucky stars, even to this day, that I ran into my dad. My boyfriend, who I live with, works as a teacher in town about 15 minutes away by train. He gets home more or less at the same time every day, give or take an hour or so. I, on the other hand, work from home. In late January of this year, we had gotten into a pretty big fight about something stupid. I can't even remember now what it was about, but it was one of those fights where we didn't speak to each other, text, call, or anything for the whole next day. So, this afternoon I was laying in bed, getting work done. It was a Tuesday, and I'm pretty sure his last class finishes at 1 p.m. on Tuesdays, meaning he should be home around 2:30. But around 1 p.m., I heard the front door open and shut. I thought, I guess he's home an hour early today. It was normal for him to skip his last class every once in a while, so I didn't think anything of it. In fact, I was mostly mentally preparing for the awkward post-fight, "Hey, how's it going?" conversation. So I continued to lay in bed and do my work and wait for him to come in and change his clothes. The bedroom door was closed and I had earplugs sort of half in, as I usually do when I'm working. But I could hear heavy footsteps of him walking around the apartment, as he always does. If we hadn't been in mid-fight, and if I wasn't so preoccupied with the awkwardness of it all, I might have noticed that it was strange how slow the footsteps were, and how long he spent walking around the living room. But I was caught up in the dramatics of the fight, and didn't think about it. I was just laying there, waiting and waiting for him to finally come in. Finally, the bedroom door slowly opened just a few inches. I turned my head towards the door and prepared to give him a sort of awkward, "We've been fighting 24 hours, huh?" smile. But the door didn't open more than a few inches. I looked and saw that it was a woman's hand with red nail polish on the doorknob. Whoever was there slowly closed the door just as they had opened it, without entering the room. I jumped out of bed, ripped out my earplugs, and sort of froze there for a few seconds, while thinking rapidly. My first thought, that was not my boyfriend. Then I thought, could it have been his mom, his sister, the landlady? For some reason I concluded that it was surely the mom or sister, so I opened the bedroom door and walked into the living room. There wasn't anyone there, but the room smelled heavily of woman's perfume. Then I came to my senses and realized his mom and sisters don't have keys and had never came over before. The landlady never entered without permission. This was a stranger. I ran back into the bedroom and shut the door, now shaking heavily. There's a balcony connected to the bedroom, so despite the cold January rain, I stood on the balcony and called my boyfriend. He picked up and I asked him if his mom or sister might have came over, unannounced. "No, don't move. I'm calling the police." The police were there in a few minutes and searched the whole apartment. Of course, nobody was in there at this point. It was weird though. Nothing was missing from the apartment, despite keeping a jar full of money right next to the entrance. Nothing was even touched. In fact, it seemed like the intruder came straight into the bedroom, saw my legs on the bed, panicked, and just left. You can't open the big wooden front door without a key. For a few days, my boyfriend and I were convinced that it was a landlady being nosy, and I began to feel a little better. Nevertheless, we demanded the landlady change our locks. When she came to change them with her husband, she made a discovery. There was a square area by the keyhole that had been scratched away with something. The landlady said surely someone used tools to break into the apartment. Then, a day or two later, my boyfriend told me, I have to tell you something, but don't freak out." He told me that the orange kitchen scissors were missing. I obviously freaked out. I tore the apartment apart looking for those scissors. It's been 6 months and those scissors are gone. So the whole thing is just creepy and weird. A stranger breaks into a nice apartment but doesn't touch or take anything valuable, not even the jar of money sitting right next to the entrance. Takes scissors from the kitchen, goes straight into the bedroom, sees someone on the bed and leaves immediately. I never got to meet this person who opened the door that day, and I hope I never do. I once met up with an old friend of mine, male, 22. A friend I had known for a few years prior to the meetup, in November of 2017. I actually met this person on a dating site. However, as time went on, the relationship between us became strictly platonic. There were no red flags. My gut did not warn me, so I completely trusted this person. We met up in town, behind a bus station, on a greasy hill surrounded by trees and a tall wall. Our meeting was just to have a smoke, get a little high, and to have a small catch-up. The meetup was fine. I had actually started smoking weed a few months before, so I was still relatively new to it. He had brought something new for me to try, purple haze. I wasn't at all anxious about trying it, as I completely trusted this person, and would have never believed that he would lie to me. He packed a full blunt for me, but I only managed to smoke about a quarter of the blunt. We spoke during this time, about work, our previous relationships and random stuff. About a half an hour later, I start feeling extremely lightheaded and anxious. I suddenly had this strange feeling where I did not feel comfortable at all and really wanted to go home. When I asked him if I could go home, he offered to take me, but I said, "No, it's okay." He offered again, "Please let me take you home. You'd be safe with me. I won't hurt you." I shook my head and said, "No thank you, I could take myself home." When I started to walk away, I felt like I was walking on a cloud. My head became dizzy and my eyesight was a little blurry. I had never felt like this before, and in time, I started to panic. When we made our way down the hill towards the bus station, I was relieved, as there were a lot of people around, so if anything happened, someone would step in. I became extremely terrified of him. I had this horrible feeling in my gut that told me to get away from him when I got to the bus station. I told him that I could call a taxi and go home. His tone was no longer nice, but very stern. "I'm gonna take you home now," and began to pull on my jacket. I told him no, and that I was gonna go home on my own. Pulled my jacket harder, and I fell against him. He pulled me into him and told me that I don't need to be scared of him, but I was so terrified. At this point, I started to feel very paranoid, and I couldn't see properly. I pushed him away from me and rubbed my eyes. He tried to pull my phone from me and yelled in my face, "Do you ever listen? I'm taking you home." I noticed a few people had stopped and asked if I was okay. All I remember is I wanted to go home, so a lady kindly called a taxi for me and waited with me, made sure I was okay, and helped me into the taxi. During the time when I waited for the taxi, he kept trying to get me to come into his car, but the lady that looked after me told him to go home and that she was going to take me home instead, so he left. When I got home, I gave the taxi driver my money and told him to keep the change. I didn't want to wait around. I just wanted to get into my bed because at this time, it's the only place I would feel safe from harm. That evening, I laid in my bed for 5 hours straight, staring at the ceiling. I don't remember if I thought about anything or if my mom came in at any time. I just remember laying in bed, doing nothing until the paranoia and the sickly feeling began to wear off. I remember looking at my phone and seeing 32 missed calls from him, 10 voicemails, and 50 plus messages. The messages were weird. He had sent around 20 messages just asking where I was and when I got home. And in one of the voicemails, he told me how he had a fantasy of taking me home whilst drugged up and tying me up. He wanted to blindfold me and he wanted me to submit myself to him. I freaked out and blocked him on all social medias, Instagram, Snapchat, Discord, and blocked his phone number. Before blocking him, I told him if he ever contacted me again, I would call the police. I heard nothing from him for a month until I received a text from an unknown number, asking me how I was. I hadn't given my number to anyone, so I just ignored it. I then received another message a few minutes later saying they missed me and that they would see me soon. I asked who they were. No reply. Nothing. So creepy person who pretended to be my friend, let's never meet again. For context, I'm a 16-year-old female, but was only 14 at the time. This happened my sophomore year of high school. My high school was down the street from a decently sized shopping center in the middle of a pretty large suburb. So the little plaza is normally pretty busy, mostly because of Starbucks and McDonald's that all the kids went to after school, and also the Walmart. Now the Walmart isn't the typical warehouse type. It basically only carries groceries, so it typically doesn't attract your creepy Walmart types. On the day that this all went down, my friend and I decided to walk to McDonald's in the plaza to grab a bite to eat and chat. We decided we wanted to buy some cans from Walmart to donate to people in need of hurricane relief. Since we came directly from school and neither of us can drive, we both still had our backpacks on. I was being paranoid of being accused of stealing. I'm black and definitely don't live in the most progressive area, to say the least. So I left my bag with my friend who waited outside while I bought stuff. Now here's where it goes downhill. I walked in and headed straight for the cans, which were on the edge of the aisle, which was right next to the entrance. I was gathering cans in my arms when I see an old man, 70 or 80-ish. He was hobbling, not walking, hobbling towards me. I assume that he's just walking into my aisle to shop, and I give him a polite, "Hi, how are you?" smile, and go back to my can shopping. Only, now I realize this guy's eyes are trained on me, and the closer he gets to the aisle, the clearer it becomes that he's trying to talk to me. I'm a little weirded out at this point, but again, I assume he's harmless. Wrong. He eventually stops next to me, and I turn to him in acknowledgement, and he has a horrible fake smile on his face. Laughing, he says to me, "You know why I come to Walmart? To look at beautiful girls like you." At this point, I started to become scared. My mind started racing to all sorts of conclusions, and I questioned what I should do or say. Should I yell for help? Ignore him? Be rude to him? I had no clue. I ended up trying to still be polite and simply said thank you, hoping that that would satisfy him and he would leave. Wrong again. This wasn't enough for him, I guess, because he started chatting me up. He asked me stuff that I don't remember. Then he asked me the golden question. "So, how old are you?" This was it. This was the time to tell him my true age, and then he would back off, learning that I was grossly underage. Finally, I had my ticket out of this horrific exchange. Except, when I told him that I was 14, he cocked his head to me and his sick smile widened. "14, you say? I thought you were 17, he stated, while almost seeming to have more interest by learning this fact. At this point, I'm nearly in tears, but I am too damn nice to tell anyone to leave me alone. So I just humored him with nods, until he finally left. I was mortified. I felt violated and dirty for not telling him to leave me alone. After he was far out of sight, I walked over to customer service counter and told him what happened. He kept on hitting on me, even after assuming and knowing for a fact that I was underage. At this point I was hysterical. The customer service guy had the nerve to tell me that they couldn't do anything at all, not even asking him to leave. I left the store without my cans and returned to my friend in tears and told her what happened. My friend didn't take lightly to this guy and tried again to reason with customer service to no avail. We decided it was time to leave, so we called my mom to come get us and agreed to tell her when she arrived. When she eventually pulled up into the parking lot, we told her everything, and once again I was marched back into the store, but not to talk to customer service. By some stroke of luck, this guy was walking out of the store as we were walking in, and when I told my mom that that was the guy, she let loose. The wrath of an angry black mother was released on this unsuspecting old white dude, and this dummy response, "I didn't know she was 14. Nice save, dickhead. So to the predator at Walmart, let's not meet again. About a month ago, I took an Uber to Starbucks to wait for my boyfriend, since he couldn't pick me up at home for other reasons. I was sitting in Starbucks, sitting at a table, waiting for my drink. I have a strong resting bitch face, especially when I'm in public alone. I'm only 5 foot tall, 100 pounds, so I'm teeny. I try to have it as strong as possible to keep the creeps away. This day, it didn't work, unfortunately. My boyfriend was at MEPS for the Navy, so I was having our friend pick me up. I'm sitting there waiting, and this creepy guy comes out of nowhere and introduced himself. I immediately tense up as he sat down across the table from me. He tells me he didn't want to be weird because he kept looking at me, so he decided to come talk to me and said I seemed cool. He proceeds to ask me if I'm in school because I had a backpack on. I tell him no. He asks me if I work, and I say not at the moment. I try to be as short with him as possible while giving everybody the help look. He asked me if I'm local and if I drive, and I simply responded, Uber. He asked me if I have a boyfriend, and I said yes, I'm actually engaged, and my fiancé is in the Navy. He looks down at my left hand, which thankfully I have a promise ring on. He tells me that he has military friends, and I don't respond. I never made eye contact with him, but made mental notes of everything about him. He was average height and weight, with narrow jaw and horrible brown teeth. He tells me he's a writer that's working on a book. He also offers me a ride, which I respond to him saying no thank you, as I have someone coming to get me. He finally ends up leaving me alone after playing 21 questions. I get my drink and go outside, where I didn't think he could see me. I'm texting my friend, trying to have one call me. Next thing I know, he comes up again and sits across the table. He offers me a job typing for him and says he pays $20 an hour in cash. I decline, but he keeps on going on about how he can meet up so he can pay me and give me rides whenever I needed. He also tells me he's a photographer and a web designer. I tell him that I can't accept because my fiance would not be okay with it, and he's at work, so I can't talk to him about it yet. He offers to leave his number so my fiance can call him himself, and I told him he would not be okay with it. He asks if he's strict, and I say no, he's protective. He then says I can give him my number, and I say my fiance would definitely not be okay with that. He tells me that he's not trying to break up my relationship, but he's just trying to help me out, and tells me how he has married couple friends. He finally leaves me alone, after repeatedly saying he wasn't trying to be weird. I quickly leave and go somewhere else to hide in case he follows me. I never went back to that Starbucks again. I thought that that would be the only time I would have to deal with this creepy ass, but I was wrong. He may not seem too creepy to some, but being there, he had a very creepy vibe to him. So this last Friday, I went to Target to wait for my boyfriend. The Target is in the same shopping center as the Starbucks, but I hadn't seen him, so I felt safe. I got bored, so I decided to sit outside. That was my mistake. I should have stayed inside. I'm sitting on a bench in front of the store, and I see someone out of the corner of my eye walking in front of me from my left side. I glance up and realize it's him. I immediately panic and text my friend so he can call me. I wanted to go back into the store, but he went in that direction. He stopped by the doors and just stood there for a good 5 or more minutes, looking around before going in. I tell my friend to hurry and call me, but he's in the middle of something and says he'll call me in 2 minutes. As I'm waiting, I see him coming back towards me. He spent like 2 minutes in the store. He walks past me, then comes back and comes up to me. I get very nervous and scared. He makes up some excuse to talk to me. He says hello, and I say hi, with as much attitude as I can give him, without looking up from my phone. He asked me if he could ask me something, so with attitude I say, "What?" He quickly responds with, "I'm new here and I'm looking for... Never mind, sorry," and walks away. Thankfully, at this point, my friend calls me, and we're on the phone for a good 45 minutes to an hour, and the dude disappeared completely. I mentioned to my friend that if the dude is around when my boyfriend gets to me, he would handle it. My boyfriend just got into the Navy and wouldn't put hands on the creep, but he's taller and very muscular, so he would scare the shit out of him. My friend ends up having to go, and we hang up. Literally, in the same second the creep walks by again, he was waiting out of sight where he could hear me. It was 3:26 p.m., and my boyfriend got off of work at 3:30. So I texted him and told him that the creep was around me, and told him that I was going to call him at 3:30 and to please answer. He hadn't seen my messages but answered, so I told him what happened and had him stay on the phone with me until he got me, because I was really scared. The creepy guy walks back out of the store again after only 2 minutes inside. He goes and stands out of sight again. I loudly say babe multiple times, knowing that he's listening. Next thing I know, he's walking away back to the Starbucks. My boyfriend gets to me and was going to verbally beat the shit out of him, and of course the coward is nowhere to be found. Needless to say, I'm never going to that area alone ever again. Hey, this is Bad Vibes. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is on Walmart. I'm sure most of you have been to Walmart and seen some creepy or weird people. The following are experiences that took place in Walmart and that are creepy and even scary. This is my first video on Walmart, so I hope you enjoy and hit that like button if you do. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. About 2 years ago, when I had just turned 16, I was at Walmart. It was the evening, around 6 or 7 p.m. I was with my dad, but he stayed in the car while I ran in to grab some yogurt. While I was looking for the yogurt, I saw a man, probably in his late 60s or 70s. He was pretty tall, about 6'2". He was bald, with a gray mustache, and wearing jeans with a blue flannel shirt. I noticed he was looking at me, but didn't really think anything of it. A few moments later, I felt a hand on my shoulder, squeezing it pretty hard. I turned around, and to no surprise, there he was. I had no idea what he was saying, something about yogurt, and something about me. I was kind of in shock, and was just trying to figure out how to get away from him. I tried to pull away, but he squeezed harder. Sad thing is, there were a lot of people around, but no one even tried to help me. Finally, I yanked away from him so hard that I got loose, and walked away really fast. I turned around, and he was following me. I turned into an aisle, and kept turning into different aisles, while I called my dad. My dad came in and got me. We looked around for him, but we were never able to find him. Creepy man at Walmart, let's never, ever meet again. My best friend and I were at Walmart one day to get groceries for her mom. We walked in and started to grab produce that was on the list when I noticed a strange man standing right next to the front door and just staring. It gave me the creeps, but overall, I thought it was just another weird man. I live in Southern California, and they're everywhere. He was about 6'3", Hispanic, and wearing a Ducks sweatshirt. As I was grabbing some potatoes, he comes uncomfortably close and looks at potatoes too. I walk away and go to my friend, who was about 20 feet away from me. I didn't mention this man to my friend because I thought he just had no clue of keeping a good social distance between people. We finally made our way to the soup aisle, and there he comes walking down the aisle right between me and my best friend to look at chicken broth. I tell my friend we need to grab other things, so we leave the aisle, and I give her a rundown that I believe this man is following us. She agrees that she has seen him and feels a weird energy around him. We head over to the tampon section because my friend needed some. I'm standing at the cart and she's squatted down on the ground when the man comes up and squats right next to her, looking at pads and tampons. This made us feel extremely awkward, so we left immediately and went to the back of the store to see if he was actually stalking us. We had noticed that in his basket, he had nothing but a bottle of Sprite, yet he's been down so many food item aisles with us, and he should at least grab something if he was just a normal shopper. We waited about 5 minutes in the back of Walmart, and then start walking back to the front, and we see him walking the opposite way as us, peering down each aisle. Once he sees us, he stops and just pretends to look at something on the side aisle while keeping eye contact on us. My friend and I went into the makeup section. If you know a ghetto Walmart, you know that it's blocked on one of the sides, and on the other entrance, there are a lot of cameras. We go in there and look through one of the aisles and see him searching for us. We both start to freak out because we aren't the strongest girls, and we know that he could probably take us if it came down to that. We decide to hurry up and get in line to check out. I was talking to my best friend, facing away from the cashier, when I see him get in line right behind us. She did the most ballsy thing I have ever seen her do and told him off. She was saying how he had followed us and went down every aisle that we had, but he only had a bottle of Sprite. Soon after, he scarcely walks away, which still made us feel uneasy. We didn't know if he would be waiting for us outside or have some friends ready to get us. We went to a worker and told them to keep an eye out for this guy. After we check out, we quickly made our way to the car with my friend's taser out and ready to zap. We made it back safe to the car and didn't see him after our interaction. Hopefully I never meet this guy again. For 6 months last year, I lived in the north of Spain. About a week before I was going to move back to Ireland, my friend and I were at my house having dinner and drinking a little. I was renting an apartment in the city, and my roommate was an older lady, maybe in her 50s. I'm 20. That night, my roommate left to have dinner with her friends. About a minute after she had left, someone buzzed our door to be let into our building. I looked at the camera and didn't recognize the woman. She looked to be in her late 20s or early 30s, so I assumed that it was one of my roommate's friends and she was coming over to meet her or something. I buzzed her into the building, assuming they would meet in the lobby. At first, I didn't buzz her in because I didn't recognize her, and she walked away from the door, but then I hit the buzzer as soon as she walked away, and then myself walked away from the camera, meaning I couldn't see if she actually entered or not. Assuming that if she didn't enter, she would just text my roommate. Boy, I was wrong. The woman came up to my apartment building on the 6th floor. She came up just 2 minutes after my roommate left, so I know she didn't take the stairs, and I know they must have seen each other when my roommate got off the lift and the lady got in. Realizing that this was weird, I didn't open the door when she rings it. I looked through the peephole just to confirm that it was nobody I knew. At this point, I back away from the door and gesture to my friend to be silent. We creep back to my room, which is on the far side of the apartment, and I begin calling my roommate, who isn't picking up. Meanwhile, this lady is still ringing my doorbell. My roommate is not picking up, and my friend is just telling me to open the door. In her mind, it was a woman, so she must be harmless. I tell her that she's an idiot for underestimating the female sex. Women can be criminals too. She keeps telling me to open the door, and I refuse. She keeps ringing, and I keep looking out the peephole. At this point, I understand that if she knew my roommate or was looking for someone, she would just called or text them. She didn't take out her phone. She just stayed eerily silent, didn't call out names or ask if anyone was home. This was just weird to me. I finally get through to my roommate. She says she wasn't expecting anyone, and she doesn't know anyone in that age range. She asks if I'm okay, and I say I'm fine. Now it's been at least 20 minutes. I know that the lady knows that someone's home because the lights are on, and my understanding is that's why she's not leaving. I continue watching her through the peephole and see her go into the lift for a minute and then come back up again. The lift is very loud, and I would have heard it move. It didn't. She just went in and came out. In my mind, this means someone was waiting in the lift for her. This screams sketchy to me. After about 40 minutes, she leaves. I run to our hall and flick on the outside camera. This lady left the building with 2 men. They all had backpacks on. I am a paramedic and have been for about 10 years. Working in emergency medicine, you'll get to see the weirdest and worst of people. So it's not uncommon for these types of stories to exist. However, in my 10 years, I have never experienced pure terror incarnate like I had about 6 years ago. I will not be revealing specific or identifying details as it pertains to privacy. This may be a bit long, but it's definitely worth a listen. About 6 years ago, I moved to another city for work. I worked for the 911 ambulance service that responded to calls in the city, as well as the county, which had a few smaller towns. The city itself was not large, maybe about 100,000 people. Working for the service required working 24-hour shifts. It wasn't particularly busy. You maybe get 5 or 10 calls in 24 hours, and generally get some decent sleep during the night. The city was a pretty rough place, as the oil industry had boomed there, which drew all sorts of folks from all around the country to work in the oil fields nearby. One night in January, me and my partner, who was an EMT basic, received a call in the next town over. It was about 2 a.m. when the call came out, and the only information we had was that the person in the apartment called 911 after hearing the downstairs neighbor screaming for help. We responded emergent, as the details were very limited. When we arrived on the scene, police and fire department were already there, and we were getting ready to make our entrance into the building with them. The person who called 911 was there and told us which apartment she heard the screaming from. We attempted to pound on the door at first to get the resident to come to the door. When no one answered, the fire department got ready to spread the door and make an entry. Luckily, the landlord showed up and gave us the key to the unit. As we opened the door, the creepiness started. The apartment was pitch black, not a single light, as if no one was home. The police entered first with their flashlights. We followed. Looking around the apartment, the kitchen and dining room looked like a hoarder's nest. I'm not exaggerating when I say there was literally a 5-foot-tall mountain of garbage, food, dishes in the kitchen, and the same thing in the living room, but with magazines, clothes, and garbage. This meant that there was a very narrow walkway to navigate the apartment. Officers proceeded down the hallway, ahead where the bedroom and bathroom was. One of the officers stopped at the bathroom door, as there was a light shining from underneath it. The officer opened the door and just stood in the hallway. With a flat tone, he said, "She's in here." I walked into the bathroom. The first thing I noticed was the light of the bathroom. It was a very pale yellow light coming from a single bulb on the ceiling, similar to those old heat lamps that used to be common in bathrooms. The light gave off an odd vibe, as it was just an unnatural light. The next thing I noticed was the lack of anything in the bathroom. No floor mats, no toilet cover, no towels, no knickknacks. Just nothing. Empty. Except the vanity on top in the bowl of the sink were approximately 20 to 30 makeup bottles piled up. Some were opened and leaking, causing there to be powders and liquids everywhere. The last thing I noticed was the body of an elderly woman laying naked in her tub. As I walked closer, I could see her laying on her side, nearly in the fetal position. Her skin was pale, and there was about 8 inches of water in the tub. Looking at her face, her eyes were closed, and her head was against the bottom of the tub, with her mouth and nose completely submerged under water. My partner steps behind me. He suggests we call the coroner and inform him of the body. 2 officers pile into the bathroom behind my partner, so there's 4 of us in this tiny bathroom, with me next to the lady in the tub. With me being who I am, I decided to do my due diligence and at least try to make sure the lady was dead. I kneeled down next to the tub and reached my arm in and put my fingers on her neck to attempt to check for a pulse. In that instant, without a warning or the slightest hint of movement, the woman springs up out of the bathtub with the agility and speed of a feral cat. The only reaction I was able to manage was to just stand up as quick as possible. As I stood there staring at her, she stared back at me, eyes wide as can be. Before she started screaming at me, she attempted to cover herself with her hands as best as she could, while sitting in the water still. I quickly turned around to notice that everyone who was behind me in the bathroom bolted out of there. Not a single soul in sight. I tried to steady myself and tried to calm down the lady, telling her who I was and why I was there. She denied screaming and told me that she does this every morning as she has some kind of joint condition and soaking in warm water helps ease her joint pain. Now at this point, I have my doubts and I have to question this lady's sanity. I question her about self-harm and address what could be potentially interpreted as suicidal behavior. She denies all of it. The next step is to determine her mental capacity to ensure that she's in the right frame of mind to make reasonable and appropriate decisions. She answers all my questions appropriately, and at this point, per law, she's able to refuse any and all care as she is mentally sound. I asked her if she will allow me to check out her vitals so that I can be sure that she is healthy and I can add it to my report. She refuses and tells me to get out of her house, which she has a right to do. I acknowledge and have her sign a refusal form. As I leave the bathroom, my partner, the 2 officers that were in the bathroom with me, along with the other 2 officers and firefighters that were waiting in the apartment, are just staring at me with eyes wide and gaping mouths, speechless. I don't say a word as we all leave the apartment. Once we are outside, I had the most uneasy, uncontrolled fit of laughter. My partner and the officers started laughing too. I thought I might have shit myself. My partner told me that all she remembers is seeing her move, hearing me say, "Oh fuck," which I don't even remember, and running out of the bathroom. I wish I could say that I never saw that lady again, but that would be untrue. This one will be a little shorter since you already have my backstory. Like I said, after this call, I was able to laugh it off once my heart stopped racing. I figured that I would never have to see this lady again, and that gave me comfort. I told the story several times to my family, friends, and coworkers just because of the sheer shock value. This part of the story, I've only told a couple people, because most probably can't stomach it. So be warned, this contains some graphic content. About 3 months after the first call with the bathtub lady, I was working with another EMT basic partner. Not the same one as before, but he is well aware of the story. So the day is going by like normal, and then nightfall comes. I'm hoping to get some sleep, as generally the night is a little calmer. Each of our stations have a few bedrooms with twin beds that allow us to sleep somewhat comfortably. Take off my boots and lay down and doze. I always keep the radio turned way up and by my head so I can wake up if we get a call. Sure enough, tones drop on the radio and I wake up. Looking at the clock, it's around 4 a.m. Radio traffic requests an ambulance for a welfare check on an individual that had not been seen for a while. Me and my partner get up, put our boots on, and start responding to the address. As we get closer, I start recognizing the area. Before I even get to the building, I tell my partner, "I swear to God, if this is the same fucking lady." He laughs and we continue. As we pull up to the scene, sure as shit, same fucking building. At this point, my heart starts to race again. A few officers are already on the scene. As I get out of the ambulance, one of the officers comes up and tells me, "The lady that we are here for has a friend that works at the gas station nearby. The friend told 911 that the lady comes to visit her every day, but the friend hasn't seen her in weeks." He also told me that there's an odor coming from the apartment complex. If you work in EMS or have been around such, you know what that means. If not, then I won't spoil it just yet. I asked the officer if she's familiar with this person or if she's heard the story of my last encounter. The officer tells me that she is not, but her other 2 co-workers behind her were on the original call with me and are smiling but not saying a word. I tell the officer who the person is and our last run in with her. The officer just raises an eyebrow a bit and says, "Okay." So we approach the apartment complex yet again. As I open the main door, you can immediately smell the odor permeating through the entire complex. We walk downstairs to the door of the lady's apartment. I bang on it a few times and shout, "Ambulance." No response. Officers bang on the door. No response. We try to get a hold of the landlord again to give us access, but he's unavailable. Over the radio, I request the fire department and request that they bring the door spreader. The fire department arrives and they come downstairs. They set up the door spreader. If you don't know what a door spreader is, it's a tool that the fire department places between the two door jambs and uses a lever to start pressuring the door jamb apart, freeing the latch from the door frame so you can get in. As we finally get the door open, the awful smell spills out of the apartment. Same thing as last time. Pitch black in the apartment, piles of garbage everywhere around the apartment, 5 feet high, that barely allows you to move through. This time it's a bit different. There are thousands of flies buzzing around. Again, the officers enter first, with us following with our flashlights. One of the male officers gets down the hallway to the bathroom and opens the door. He looks back at me, shakes his head, and continues forward. My EMT partner, who is pretty new at this, is right behind me. I turn to him and tell him to wait in the hallway and that I'll let him know when I need him. I was trying to be nice and spare him. The officer continues down the hallway towards the bedroom. At this point, the anxiety is increasing because now we are in uncharted territory once again. I have no idea what we're going to find. The officer eventually makes his way into the bedroom. I see him shine his lights into the bedroom, then uses a bent elbow to cover his mouth and nose, and waves over to me. As I walk to him, the smell gets extremely stronger. I peer into the bedroom with our flashlights, and that's when I see her. The bedroom is set up with a bed in the middle of the room, with a headboard pressed against the wall. So there is a small space on either side of the foot of the bed, or at least what would have been if the floor wasn't filled to the height of the bed with clothes, magazines, books, food, and garbage. At the foot of the bed are 2 large 4-foot tall piles of random shit that are at the base and are about 4 feet in diameter. I know it's hard to visualize, but picture 2 large shaped mounds side by side at the foot of the bed. In the tiny space between the 2 large mounds, at the foot of the bed, lies Bathroom Lady. Now, this lady was a very small old lady. When I saw her the first time, she maybe weighed 90 pounds. She was also a white lady. Stunned for a moment, I stand next to an officer and just look. This is the part that gets grotesque. Bathroom Lady is laying perfectly on her back, with her arms folded up and crossed in front of her, just like you see a skeleton doing in the movies. Bathroom Lady's skin looks almost like paper. It is dried out and shrunken, turning black and rotting. The levels of decomposition from her is one I haven't seen before. Her hip bones were visible where the skin had cracked and receded. Her kneecaps were coming out from her skin. A few ribs were just barely visible, poking through the skin, on the side of her upper abdominal area. Her hair was beginning to fall out. Her lips were gone. Her eyes were gone. I got a bit closer to look, and all I kept thinking was, if you wake up, this officer's gonna draw and shoot you in the head. I walked a little closer. She was almost perfectly preserved, like a mummy. There was absolutely nothing left of her eyes. The sockets were completely empty, with the exception of a few maggots crawling around her sockets. From behind me, I hear quite loud, muffled gags. I walk back out to my partner. I tell him, "Sorry man, but we need the body bag, and I need your help." Everyone else walks outside to get some fresh air. The officer that was in the bedroom with me gagged a few more times outside, but luckily didn't vomit. The one good thing about this is we had recently been given really nice PARP respirators from FEMA for the recent Ebola outbreak. My partner grabbed the body bag and I grabbed the PARPs. We put our gear on and walked back inside. The officer that was with me like a fucking champ came back inside as well without a respirator and held a flashlight for us. Me and my partner spent maybe 10 minutes just clearing out all the trash that we could to make enough room to get the body bag down next to the bathtub lady. Once we got enough room, the sketchy part came. If you have ever seen a body with that amount of decomposition, it's very brittle. We attempted to move her over as carefully as we could, as not to break anything. However, when we attempted to move her, she was stuck. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was at the head, my partner was at the feet trying to move her. I put my arm down her back and neck to support her head so it didn't break off. I got down to look as I lifted to see what we were getting stuck on. As I lifted, I saw, but it was already too late. As I lifted, the skin on her back was stuck to the carpet. so as I lifted her, it started peeling off her ribs and spine. We had no other choice, as we were unable to cut the carpet at this time. We lifted her up, all her skin came off of her back and stayed stuck to the floor, almost like some sick chalk outline, which is when I saw it. What seemed to be like 1,000 maggots crawling around on the side of her skin, between her skin and her back. We moved her gently into the bag, luckily not breaking anything. We got the bag out and into the ambulance, where we would transport her to the funeral home with our windows rolled down and quickly, so we wouldn't have to stay with her in the ambulance. So that's my story about Bathtub Lady. Sorry for the gross details. What we figured is she died shortly after our first encounter with her, and that we may have been the last ones to see her alive. If you haven't seen my other stories I've posted on here, I'll give you the same background. I am and have been a paramedic for about 10 years. My entire career has been spent in emergency medicine, responding to 911 calls, and providing advanced life support for life-threatening illnesses and injuries. The calls we respond to range from inappropriate use of an ambulance to minutes away from death, and oftentimes, it's already too late. If you've read my other stories on here, you know about my background. But in 2014, I moved to another city, hours away from home, to work. The city was smallish, less than 100,000 people, but the ambulance serviced the entire county where the city resides. We worked 24-hour shifts, which weren't too bad. The days usually were somewhat busy, and at nights, the ambulance station had rooms with twin beds that allowed you to get some fairly decent sleep at night. Most of the calls that would classify as crazy, creepy, or scary always tend to come at night. The day that the story takes place is a little different than normal. Normally I get an EMT basic partner, which means since I am an advanced provider on the truck, I get all the patients. But today, I had another paramedic partner because we were training a new hire paramedic. It was her first day of field training orientation. This means we generally let her take the calls and sit back and evaluate her performance to ensure she's capable and doesn't kill anyone. This was her first day after graduation, so she was still pretty green. I could see that she was very nervous and trying very hard to do her best. So as per usual, the day was pretty busy, but as it began to wind down, I was getting ready to attempt to take a nap. I kicked off my boots and laid down on my bed, on top of the covers, easier to get up and going in case a call comes in. I put the radio up by my head, full volume like I always do, so I could be sure to wake up if we get a call. Sure enough, midnight starts to roll around and I hear a call go out. Dispatcher says, "Man who has been stabbed is not breathing." Luckily, it's not my call, and another ambulance responds, so I go back to bed, or try to. About 30 minutes later, another call goes out, and this time it's for me. Dispatcher information: man with a knife wound on his hands, police are on scene. I get my boots on, wake up the new girl and my partner, and walk out to the ambulance. The area of the call was right smack dab in the middle of downtown. We responded non-emergent, as it was a non-life-threatening injury. As we arrived on the scene, there's probably around 6 police cars, all with their lights on. The area itself was through an alleyway behind a building just off the main street. As we pull up, there's a number of officers, a couple of sheriff deputies, and a detective all standing around this man with rags on his hands. As I get closer, I can see this man was bald, middle-aged, and almost had a homeless look to him. He also had a big dark spot in the middle of his forehead. One of the officers approached me to fill me in what was going on before I talked to the guy and started to treat him. The officer tells me the man has large lacerations on the back of his hands that he received from a knife. At this point, I was still a bit groggy and didn't put 2 and 2 together. The officer says the man said that he was attacked by another man and that he's probably going to need some stitches. So as it is not serious, I have my FTO approach, first to begin her assessment and to give her a treatment plan. I stay close behind her and we both walk up to the man who was in handcuffs. As we approach, the dark spot on the guy's forehead is now clear. On the center of his forehead, stretching from his eyebrows and what would have been his hairline, is the biggest swastika tattoo I've ever seen. My FTO begins to talk to the man. I sit back and observe. Something about this man's general composure and responses chilled me. When we first walked up to this man, he was muttering something underneath his breath. I couldn't tell what he was saying, but he was repeating it over and over. My FTO asked the police to uncuff him to see the cut on his hand more clearly. At this point, one of the officers produced the knife he believes to be the weapon that caused the injury. The knife was in an evidence baggie, and it was covered in blood. It was nothing special, just looked like a cheap plastic pocket knife, like you would buy at some cheesy gift shop. It was a folding knife with a plastic blade handle, and the blade was maybe 3 inches long, with a bit of serration towards the handle. The man showed us his hands. On the back, cutting right through another swastika tattoo, was a laceration that went from the base of his pinky finger to the lower fleshy part of his thumb. It was quite wide also, approximately 3 centimeters, exposing the bone as well as some tendons. The bleeding was mostly stopped with pressure from the towel that he was holding onto. When my partner asked the man what happened, the man then repeated to us what he had been muttering to himself. "I killed him, man. He's dead, man. I had to have killed him. He's gotta be dead." At this point, I'm starting to put it together and understanding the larger picture. We get the man into the ambulance so we can assess for any more injuries that may not be visible underneath his clothing. After a thorough search, we realize that there's no more injuries, so we begin to transport him to the hospital. My FTO bandaged the man's hand, and we were driving, and I start asking questions trying to figure out the details. The man told me everything I wanted to know, and never lost that chilling vibe. Staring distantly as he recounted what happened, the man told me that he is homeless and was wandering around when a friend offered him a ride. He says that he was leery of this man, but decided to get in anyway and accept the offer. The man said the friend began asking him if he hated black people. The man said he didn't, and that he wasn't racist. He tells me this is when his friend became upset with him and tried to stab him with a pocket knife. The man attempted to defend himself, managed to wrestle the knife away from his friend, and stabbed him in the back before jumping out of the car and running. So with the shocking telling of the tale, we continued to transport the man in silence. Also a side note, an officer rode in the ambulance with us the whole way. After we dropped him off at the ER, we all kind of sat there shocked, leaving the hospital. We returned to the station and tried to get some sleep. However, we were not destined for sleep that night. An hour later, we get another call for a body removal from downtown, less than 3 blocks away from our last call. We pull up to the area, which is in the middle of the street. The street itself is blocked off 100 feet on both sides by a fire truck and police cars. The fire truck was equipped with a double stack of 4 halogen lights, risen up on a ladder, shining down to illuminate the area. Walking up with a stretcher and a body bag, the detective on scene tells us that they are done with the investigation and they are ready for us to take the body to the medical examiner's office. At this point, we are still 50 feet away from where the body lay. From where we are, I could see the person laying in the middle of the street. We get closer and take a few minutes to examine the body. What I see and putting together what I was told is astonishing to say the least. Another middle-aged man, appears white, possibly Mexican, lays in the middle of the street on his back with his arms spread eagle and his legs straight. There's a vehicle parked on the side of the road with the driver door still open. I figured this must be the guy's vehicle. It was parked neatly, not haphazardly or incorrectly. The deceased man has streaks of blood coming out of his nose and mouth, with several small puncture wounds on his face and cheeks. Looking at his torso, there was about a dozen or more knife-shaped puncture wounds in his chest and abdomen. Most of the wounds were so jagged and barbaric looking, you could see the fat tissue pushing out of them. There wasn't much blood puddled around the man, but there was a very large trail of blood from the man to the side of the street where the curb is. The blood then continues to flow another 10 feet along the curb before spilling into the storm drain. With that much blood, the man bled out in the middle of the streets. We packaged the man into a body bag and transported him to the ME's office. When we get back to the station, my charge medic told me that the officer that rode with the first patient requested that we fill out a report on what we heard the man say. Thankfully, the rest of the shift was uneventful. Fast forward to a couple years ago, I received a call from the state's attorney. He asked if I remembered the call, to which I informed him that I do. He told me that this person is going on trial for murder, is pleading not guilty, and would like to go over my statement with me, as I would be a key witness and require my testimony in court. We went over my statement and talked about it a bit, then told me that he would be in touch and wished me a good day. A few days later, he calls me up again and informs me that the man changed his plea to self-defense and that I was needed in court a week later. Literally one day before the trial, he calls me up again. He tells me that this time the man has changed his plea to guilty and I was no longer needed. I don't know what happened after that. I never really looked into it. It's just another brick on the wall, so to speak. A story filed away in my brain, probably never to be forgotten. This happened a couple months ago. It feels hollow to put a catchy title on what happened to me because it freaked me the fuck out for a while. I was driving home from work at 2 a.m. I'm a nurse and live in a small city. The roads were totally deserted and it was a freezing night. I don't live far from work, maybe a couple of miles. I'm driving down a residential street around the corner from my house and I see a man laying face down in the street. Now remember, I'm a nurse. My first thought was, great, gotta help this guy up. I was coming off of a long shift, and falls happen all the time. As I slowed down the car, I suddenly realized what an idiot move this was. I'm a 100-pound woman, and I don't carry any weapons. I thought I should do something to help this guy, so I called 911 and drove past him and slowed to a stop at the end of the block. While I stopped at the light, I explained to the dispatcher that there's a man in the road that might need assistance. All of a sudden I hear a loud bang from the driver's side window. I screamed and looked over. A man was pounding on my window, jiggling the handle of my locked car. I looked in my rearview mirror and there was no man laying in the street. Still on the phone with 911, I screamed, "I'm so scared," to the dispatcher, and I floored it through the red light. I quickly told him what had happened, and even though I was right by my house, he told me to keep driving. After a few minutes I calmed down, and he told me to loop back around. I pulled over down the road from my house and stayed in the car. I didn't see the man anywhere, so I got off the phone with the dispatcher who told me he was sending the police car to cruise the area. As I gathered my things, I do a final scan of the area, and I see the man. He's walking with two other men. I hunched all the way down in my car until they were far down the road, and then bolted into my house. I don't know if he had ill intent, but it freaks the hell out of me that he wasn't alone. Always lock your car doors, and carry mace. A little backstory. When I was 19, I lived with my mom in a ranch-style house on a road that backed up to a large field. On the other side was the main highway. About half a mile down from me was a loony farmer, and about a mile on the other side of me was pretty much a crack house. I guess someone used to live there, but it was run down. I will say that the crackheads were pretty quiet. Other than those two houses, we were isolated. At the time, I was working full-time and going to school full-time. One of my classes ends at 10:30 p.m., and I often wouldn't get home on the day of the week until about 11:15ish. I was driving home one night, and I noticed a guy walking down the road. He had a yellow shirt on and track pants. I remember this outfit because it looked so stupid. It wasn't weird to see people walking down that road because of the whole crack house thing. But I instinctively looked over at him as I drove past. He turned and smiled and waved, which freaked me the fuck out. So I sped half a mile home and pull into my driveway, weirded out. I get inside and make sure all the doors and windows were secure, and then sat on the couch to be a paranoid freak and wait to make sure the dude walked past my house. Except he didn't. And there was another guy with him, dressed in darker clothes. They actually walked up my driveway and started playing around with my car, testing the handle and stuff. I was in a hurry and forgot to grab my phone from my car, so I was kind of worried that that's what they were after, until the guy in yellow started to approach my door. I'm freaking out, so I go and wake up my mom. She's out of it, and I'm trying to explain the situation when I hear the doorknob turn very slowly. Good thing it was deadbolted. She got out of bed, walked to the door, and then the yellow shirt guy knocked. I perched up on the couch so I could get a good look at him and his friend, still in the driveway. The porch light was on because of the sensor. "Yeah?" my mom said. "You dropped your wallet." I told my mom I had my wallet. It was in my purse. So she calmly told him that she had her wallet and it was too late to be knocking on people's door. I remember perfectly what he said next, even though it was about 6 years ago. "Okay, I'm not a bad guy, just so you know." We were all pretty still. No one moved, not even the guy at the door. Not even when the porch light went off. He tried the handle again. My mom told me to call the cops so she could go get the gun. And I told her I didn't have my phone. So she walked into the kitchen to grab hers off the charger. She handed me her phone and walked into the bathroom. She stared out the window in the backyard. Then she went into her room to grab the Ruger. I was talking to the cops and explaining the situation while watching the guys, explaining that there was 2 suspicious guys at our door when my mom came back out and said, "One in our backyard too," which explained why she looked out the bathroom window. She caught a glimpse of him from the kitchen and wanted to get a more discreet look. My mom walked back over to the door with her gun and said loudly, "If he tries to handle again, I'm going to open the door and shoot him." Who knows why she said this instead of waiting for the cops to arrive. But the guys took off down the road. I told her this, and she rushed into the bathroom, where the guy apparently in the backyard saw his friends running down the road and sprinted off too. They were going into the direction of the crack house. The cops searched our house and their yard, and then went to the drug house. They found 5 dudes hanging around. One was a yellow shirt guy, and I'm assuming his friends were with him. They did get arrested, and nothing weird like this happened again. But I was on edge for a while. I still make sure the doors are locked at all times of day, even though I live in a much nicer area now. Anyway, sorry it was a bit anticlimactic. The dudes got caught. Weird guys who told me that you found my wallet. Let's not meet. Hey everyone, first time poster here. I totally forgot about this story until recently, so enjoy. At the time, I had just turned 17 and was still pretty naive. I lived in England, so it's legal to work at a bar and serve alcohol as long as you were supervised, but not to drink alcohol. Not that it stopped me. I worked in a working men's club filled with middle-aged people. Most were really nice. I sold bingo tickets twice a week for my dad's cousin, and I was pretty good at it. It's not typical to get tips, but I earned more in tips than I did on my actual wage. On Saturday, my dad would come over with me to have a drink with my elder sister while they played competitive darts in the main bar overlooking my booth. This one particular night, there was this middle-aged, average-looking guy, a little on the plump side, but generally unnoticeable. On the first round of selling tickets, he was at the fruit machine opposite the entire time, looking over at me occasionally. The second round he approached me, asking me what I was selling and how bingo worked. Clearly had never played before, but hey, everyone starts somewhere, right? He bought some tickets and offered to buy me a drink. I declined and informed him I was underage. By now, I had a bit of an uneasy vibe and didn't want to take a drink from a guy I didn't know. He offered me a cola, complimenting me a little too hard. Again, I declined and went on my way to help with a game in the main hall, which was part of my job. The third time, he stood against the wall adjacent to me and just watched me work. He waited until the queue calmed down and bragged about how much money he had and how he wants to be my sugar daddy, how cute I am, commenting on my figure, my boobs, my butt, etc. I was trapped in my booth. I was late into the main hall, so the concert chairman, which is the guy that calls the bingo numbers and gives out the winnings, comes out and asks what's going on. This guy claims that we are just talking. I apologized to the chairman, and he walked me into the hall. He said that he could tell that I was freaked out, so I told him everything. He made the bar staff aware, who also made my boss, which is my cousin's dad, aware as well. The last round of selling tickets, he doesn't even wait for me to get back to my booth. He grabs my ass, telling me that he wants to be my sugar daddy once again. Tries to push me up against the wall, and is suddenly spun around. Not just by my dad, but my boss and numerous staff members and customers who saw and heard what went down. He started to argue his innocence until my dad, not so politely, introduced himself. He then knew he was fucked. My dad punches him in the nose, blood running down his face. Everyone picked him up like a plank of wood and threw him out the closed door. Never saw him after that. Everyone checked up on me to make sure I was okay. My sister covered the rest of my shift, and I was bought so many drinks. So creepy guy that wanted to be my sugar daddy, let's not meet again. This is my brother's girlfriend's story. She doesn't have a Reddit, but I told her about this subreddit, and she wanted to share her story. Because it's creepy, but also because you can learn from it. I go to school in a big city that is one of the least safe cities in the United States. I chose this school for nursing, and definitely not for the location. I live in a row house, off campus with 3 other girls. Cheaper and nicer than dorms, or so we thought. I guess you get what you pay for. We are all girls and sophomores in college. As you would guess, we go out for drinks, come back to things that we don't remember. We just started our rent in August, 3 floors, plus a basement, which was padlocked by the owner. Understandable, we would definitely have parties down there to avoid immediate cleanup. The house was great, amazing location to school and work. I am a CNA who works odd hours, which will be important later. It was not expensive and in good condition. I had never lived with this many people before. Just one roommate, so before we would definitely know if someone had misplaced or changed something. I started to notice that my snacks would either be half gone or completely gone. I was getting annoyed, but in a house of many people, it was too much work to try to figure out who ate it, so I just ignored it. Slowly, as girls do, we started making comments about someone eating our food, but in a passive-aggressive way. We all just let it go, cause who wants a whole house fight? I worked until about 11 o'clock in the NICU, and get home about 11:30, mostly on weeknights. I started to notice pants left out, or snack wrappers around. I thought it was odd cause none of my roommates had done this before, but I just think, oh, they probably drank a bottle of wine and went to bed and forgot about this. Again, my roommate started making comments. This time, we started asking because it was getting annoying that all our food being gone and things being left out. I knew it was one of them, but who wants to admit that they ate someone else's snack when in college snacks are in high commodity? We chalked it up to the girl who always smokes and eats her weight in food, but she swore it wasn't her. This went on for about 2 months. It got more obvious someone was clearly taking everyone's food. Definitely the girl who always smokes. I see her as being someone that would eat the whole snack pantry at night. I wish it was her. One night at work, I was about to get off, but a situation happened and I didn't end up leaving until 12:30. I took the bus home. I carry pepper spray, a taser, and a pocket knife, don't worry. I got home and was about to collapse. I wanted to go to bed as soon as possible. I walk in the front door, and the stairs are directly in front of you. You can also see down the side into the kitchen. I walk in and saw someone in the kitchen, but I was too tired to say hi, thinking I could end up in a 30-minute conversation about nothing, so I went straight upstairs. When I got up to the second floor, I noticed that all my roommates' doors were closed, which always meant that they were in their rooms for the night or asleep. I got a weird feeling, just something that made it click. They were all asleep, right? I texted our house group chat, asking if anyone was in the kitchen. I felt stupid for even asking. 2 responded no, and said the other 2 had been asleep. I knew it wasn't any of my roommates down there at that moment. I dialed 911, but didn't press call. I crept into my roommate's room, access hall. Thankfully, or maybe not thankfully, she didn't have her door locked. I whispered, telling her that someone was in the house. She gave me the widest eyes ever, and almost looked like she was about to cry. She didn't suspect anything like I had, but for reference, we live in a very bad area, as there was a shooting in the house 2 doors down, only weeks earlier, by an intruder. She mouthed to make a call. The whole time we were dead silent. We didn't really hear anything at all. I was starting to think I was seeing things after such a long day, and regretted that I dialed, thinking I was going to look like an idiot when they showed up, and I was just overtired and dreaming. We explained to the operator what was going on, and they said that they would send someone as soon as possible. That actually doesn't mean right away, since it's a big and dangerous city. The police showed up, and I didn't even want to go downstairs, but the operator confirmed that it was them, so I did. But the whole time, I could swear that the operator could hear my heart beating. The police came in and looked around. I'm thinking, oh God, I look so dumb. They asked if there was any other floors. We tell them technically the basement, but it's padlocked, so really no. They checked the basement just in case, and yeah, they were right. The man had been living in the padlocked basement. The lock was pulled off its hinges and just kind of propped against the wall. We never looked back there and rarely went out back. The guy had taken a comforter of one of my roommates out of the hall, had a mattress from God knows where, and his clothes. Well, he was the one moving and eating all of our stuff. He would come out in the middle of the night and do it. He started getting more comfortable. I don't know if he was drugged out or forgot to clean his tracks, or if he didn't really care. My roommates and I have pretty consistent schedules during the week, probably letting him think that any time after 12 was good to come out. We never slept with our individual doors locked, and that freaks me out the most. He had access to any one of us at any moment, and we had no idea. When he was getting arrested, I was the only one to go down and look. I don't really know why, and I wish I didn't. I took a picture in the process of him being arrested to show my roommates who were too afraid to go down, and this is him. So yeah, let's never actually meet, dude. Hello, this is Bad Vibes. Today's video is on Starbucks, which I haven't done a video on. Joining me on today's video is Lucid Lupus. He will be reading stories 4 and 5. He's a newer channel, so if you like his narrations, please drop a sub to him. His link will be in the description, as well as the pinned comment. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Back in September, I had just moved to a new city and started a new job. I was trying to make new friends, so I downloaded the app Bumble BFF. Fast forward to the end of the month. I set up a few coffee meetups with potential friends. I left work on time and walked to the Starbucks by my office. I was there early, so I decided to order a coffee and waited in line. I finally sat down by a window, minding my own business, and out of nowhere, a painfully thin lady bum comes stumbling into the Starbucks. She looks terrifying, high out of her mind, long matted hair, needle marks on her arms, smelly, a bloody mess. She basically looks like a zombie from hell. Anyway, she starts walking towards me, screaming in gibberish, and then she tries to punch me in the face. Luckily, the man sitting next to me blocks her punch, and the baristas come over from behind the counter and throw her out of the store. Right after that, my new potential friend arrives, which makes the meeting very awkward, to say the least. Zombie bum lady, let's not meet again. For some context, this took place in June, about 2 weeks before I turned 18, and I'm a female. I had just finished my A-levels and decided to join Tinder for a joke, just to have fun and waste a bit of time. I thought it would be fun to put Snapchat in my bio, just to see how much people would add me, and I admit I enjoyed the attention from guys. People added me, but no one actually messaged me except for this one guy. I'll keep his name anonymous. This guy was 20, and at the time I was 17. He was about an hour drive away from me, which will be important later. We started off just innocently chatting. The conversation was dry, but it killed boredom, so I held the conversation. One day he randomly popped up asking, "So when are we gonna meet then?" I was hesitant at first, but I agreed in the end after I ran it over with my parents. I invited him over to my house. I don't know what I was thinking, but I told him that he could come over. He got there the next day at 9 a.m. Bear in mind, he lived an hour away from me, so this was the first red flag. I was confused as hell why he wasn't dressed for the day. Nevertheless, I invited him in and finished getting ready. We just chilled and watched films all day before heading out around 2 p.m. We chilled by the beach for a bit before coming back to my house around 5 p.m. I was expecting him to go home after that, but no, he stayed. We watched a couple more films, and every now and then, I would look over at him and catch him flat out staring at me. We would lock eyes and he would say something creepy like, "I love your eyes," or, "I'm so glad we met," all while knowing me for only about 8 hours. I regret to say that we ended up kissing a lot. I felt awkward, and being a naive 17-year-old on our first real date, I thought that this was what you're supposed to do. He left around 10 p.m., which means he was at my house for like 13 hours, but there were no sparks at the end, and I was expecting this to be a one-time thing. Nope, he turned up at my house at 9 a.m. 2 days later. I went along with it because I didn't have anything better to do. Again, he didn't leave until 9 p.m. At this point, I had no interest in seeing him again, and didn't really feel a romantic connection with him. I admit, I may have led him on, as I never actually told him I wasn't interested. Looking back at it, I should have told him, and maybe the next events wouldn't have happened. My birthday rolls around, well, the day before. He shows up at 9 a.m. again and takes me out. We go to the mall, and he buys me so much. I keep saying, "No, you don't have to," and "Let me buy this," but he insisted because it was my birthday. I had only met this guy twice before, and he was buying me stuff like clothes, makeup, and sexy underwear. I was still only 17, even though my birthday was the next day. I felt like I was being treated like a prostitute. Every time we would walk around, he would force my hand into his and try to kiss me. I felt so awkward. Anyway, we get back to my house around 6 p.m. and I come home to flowers from him that he had delivered to my house. We chill in my room and I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't tell him to leave because he had just spent so much money on me. Anyway, he tried to have sex with me. He kept saying, "Come on, don't you want to have a nice birthday? I came all this way for you." Just creepy stuff like that, trying to get me to sleep with him. I just kissed him and told him I didn't want to. I wasn't a virgin, but I definitely did not want to sleep with him. He finally leaves and I just break down crying. I don't know why, I just felt so trapped. I tried to be cold with him over messages and stuff for the next few days, hoping to scare him off. It didn't work. About 3 days after my birthday, I get home from work around 9 p.m. Guess whose car I see parked outside my house? Yep. I walk in and he's sitting there, chatting to my family in the lounge. They seem to really like him, even though I told him how creepy he was being. We ended up going to the local pub after to get some drinks. We get back to my house and I'm pretty drunk. I suggest more drinks and crack open a bottle of bubbly I saved for my birthday. As we were drinking more, he gets quieter. I look up at him and ask what's wrong, and he suddenly grabs me, kisses me, and tries to put his hand up my skirt. I immediately push him off and stare at him angrily. He looks at me in a really sinister way and says, "I deserve it." Because he had drank, he couldn't drive home, so he just stayed over. I tell him I'm too drunk and I want to go to bed. Luckily, my mother happily showed him to the guest room, and I didn't see him again until the morning. I woke up around 9 a.m. and walked downstairs to find him cuddling my cat in the garden. I tell him I had a call from work saying that they needed me in an hour and that he needs to leave. He tried to protest, saying that he'll just wait till I'm off and we can hang out, but I just tell him no and that I'm seeing friends later, which wasn't a lie, but the work thing was a lie to get him to leave quicker, and yet he still protests, saying that we can all hang out together. Eventually, he takes no for an answer and leaves. I cry and cry. I tell my mom everything. She likes to tell me that he wasn't that bad, but to this day she still has no idea that I had to deal with him like I did. I meet my friend and tell her about him, and that I'm gonna leave it a couple days and tell him I don't want to see him anymore. However, that same night I get a lengthy paragraph from this guy. He professes undying love to me. Some of the most memorable quotes from this: "You're my whole world. I'd be nothing without you. I'm so glad I met you. I can't wait to share our life together." That was it. I had to be straight up with him. I told him everything, that I didn't feel a connection with him, and what he did with me when he was drunk was not okay. I even offered to return the things that he bought me, but he just said no. Surprisingly, he actually apologized and said sorry for making me feel so uncomfortable. Brilliant. That's that, I thought. Nope. He started stalking me. However, anyone who has Snapchat will know that you can view a map that tells you where your friends are. You can also turn it off so people can't see you, but I customized mine so that only people I'm close with can see where I am. He was one of them. I forgot to turn it off, and whenever I went out, there he was a couple hours later. Remember, he lives about an hour away from me. I first noticed that he had followed me after I went to the beach, the same one I went with him. I went with my friend, and about 2 or 3 hours into the day, we were getting ready to go home. I opened up my Snap Maps, as I always do, just so I could see that me and my friend were together and show her. It's a silly thing I do, but I find it cute seeing our little Bitmoji characters on the map. When I saw he, who shall not be named, was with us, his little Bitmoji character, probably like 200 yards away from us, my eyes widened, and I told my friend that the guy that I had been complaining about all day was literally here, now with us, somewhere. We panicked and sped walked to the car and drove home. That happened 2 more times. Once again with the same friend, when we visited a reservoir near my town. There was no reason for him to be there too, so I messaged him, asked him what he was doing at the reservoir when I got home. He said he was taking pictures, but the reservoir would have been more like a 3-hour round trip for him to drive, and he had never mentioned photography to me before, so I didn't believe him. It happened a 3rd time, and that's when I blocked him. I was with my extended family in a restaurant, yet this time he messaged me his location on Snapchat, which is one of the things you can do, and he was in the freaking building. I had to come up with an excuse to tell my family that I hadn't seen for months why we had to leave. I told my mom the truth, and then she explained to them after. They were understanding. I had enough. I didn't even message him again. I blocked him on everything, and luckily, I haven't heard from him since. Last month, I moved to another country, and I didn't really know anyone. Due to that, I spent a lot of time alone, and started to get bored. Although I didn't, and still don't, like the concept of Tinder, I decided to create my own account to meet people. I spent hours swiping left and right, and having brief conversations with my matches. However, most of them were men that wanted to see me on that same day, which scared me a bit. My story begins when I matched with a 30-year-old girl who didn't wait long to send me a "Hi, and asked me for my phone number. I, who had never been on this app before, thought that was normal and gave her my phone number without having spoken at all. That was my first mistake. At first, everything seemed normal. The girl, which name was Diana, sent me voice notes. We talked briefly and in superficial ways about ourselves. She seemed very, very interested in talking to me, since on several occasions she would double text me if I didn't answer quickly. And I'm not gonna lie, I found that curious. However, I paid no attention. The second day of talking to her, she asked me to meet her somewhere. And even though our conversations had been superficial, I said yes, and we set a place and an hour. Hours before our meet, I started to regret it. I deleted Tinder and sent her an apology message. That was where things got weird. She texted me that it was fine, but a few minutes later she sent me several messages, but deleted them within seconds so I couldn't read them. A couple hours later, she tried to video call me. I didn't answer and told her that I was busy. Despite all that, she called me again and again. I kept saying I was busy, but still, she called me twice at 2 a.m. By this time, I was out and drunk, and I blocked her. I felt a little bad about it, but come on. I'm a woman in her early 20s, living in a foreign country, so at the same time, I felt relief that it was over. Except it wasn't. I woke up to a hello from an unknown number, which profile picture in WhatsApp was of an old man. I asked him who he was, and in less than a minute I received an answer. It said, "Hi, it's Diane. This is my dad's number. Why do you block me? Did I annoy you?" Even in spite of how bizarre that was, I tried to empathize with her and answered with the truth. Again, she told me that it was fine, and I blocked her dad's number. In less than 2 hours, I received another message from another unknown number. It said, "Hi, it's Diane. Why do you keep blocking me? I need to talk to you. Text me." At this point, I no longer find it funny. I tell her that I'm not interested in talking to her, and she literally tells me, "I need to talk to you about something. There's a girl who is harassing me. She does black magic." I repeated that I'm not interested, and she goes like, "You don't believe me, do you?" And I blocked her again, for the third time. Anyway, I really don't know if this was some kind of strange joke, but I think I could say that my first experience using Tinder was tragic. I wonder if it's always that way, though, because I've been thinking about downloading the app again. And at least next time I won't share my number with someone who I hadn't talked to at all. Let's hope for the best. And Diana, let's not fucking meet. Hey, this is Bad Vibes. Today's video is on those online dating stories. You know, you go online to try to find someone, and you end up finding the wrong type, the dangerous type. So make sure you hit that like button, as it really helps, and sit back, relax, and enjoy. So about a year ago, I moved into a new apartment. It was my second year of living alone. The city was relatively small, and I go to the local university there. One night I was bored at home and decided to set up a Tinder date. I was talking to this apparent normal guy and asked if he could come over to my place. At the time, I didn't see anything wrong with that, so I invited him and told him that I lived alone. About 20 minutes after the message, he arrives at my apartment wearing a black hoodie, big earphones, and he asked me if there were security cameras in the hallway, which was odd. I said that there was a couple, and from that, I could tell that I just made a mistake. He got into my apartment, and we made out for like 10 minutes, in my bed. He asked if he could try some kinks on me. At the moment, I was not thinking rationally anymore, and I said yeah. He started biting my neck, then my chest, then my legs, and then he started getting into some really weird kinks. He started pinching me really hard, pulling my skin, and really digging his nails into my body. At this time, I was completely panicking and asked him to stop, but he wouldn't. To top things off, he started choking me, and I couldn't get him off of me because he was a big buff dude. At last, he stopped, and I rushed into the bathroom, saying I needed to pee. In no time, I grabbed a knife and locked myself in the bathroom and called my other friends to come help. I got out and told him to get the hell out of my apartment or I would call the police. To my surprise, he tried to attack me, but I had a knife in my hand and started screaming. After hearing the doorbell, he quickly got dressed and rushed down the stairs. Please be careful when bringing strange people into your home. This shit scared me for life, and I don't think I'll ever do Tinder dates again. So this happened about 1 month after I finished high school. I was 18 at the time and tired of being inexperienced. I went to a pretty nerdy school, so I, nor others, were crazy about getting into relationships or hookups. So after seeing my friends dabble with Tinder, I decided to try it myself. I mostly did it for a joke, sending funny pictures to my friends over some weird messages I got or funny bios I found. But I was also up to meet someone, if they seemed fine. So eventually, this dude and I started talking, and he asked to meet me at the local hangout, a gas station. That tells you something about my town. He seemed alright, fairly cute, only a year older. I decided it was fine, especially considering one of my friends was at the place, so if this guy was a total weirdo from the start, I could escape. But it was fine, and the first time we hung out in his car, nothing drastic happened. We kissed, but that's all that happened. We hung out in his car again and drove around and made out, but once again, nothing drastic happened. Both of us were kind of just trying to lose our virginity and get it out of the way. My car was small, and so was his, and both of us had pretty strict parents, so we scheduled to meet up next Saturday at a cheap motel to get it over with. So that day comes, I wake up and I'm literally in the worst pain of my life. I was on birth control, but it just made it worse, and I'm in terrible pain. I text him saying that I need to wait a week. Instead of just an alright, or even a slightly annoyed tone, this guy basically tries to pressure me into going anyway. I try to explain that I'm in pain, and if he honestly can't wait a week, he can go find another girl. He starts calling me a liar, saying that I'm making it up so I can sleep with another guy. Basically sends me texts from 9 PM to 6 AM, calling me all sorts of nasty things, saying I'm really ugly and horribly boring, and that he was just doing this as a favor, and that I'm gonna regret this, and so on. I'm upset, obviously. I never had someone say the things like he said to me. I generally started feeling pretty awful about myself, thinking that I should have just sucked it up and gone with him anyway. It basically put me in a really horrible mood the whole week, so much that I basically turned into a big sobbing mess when I went with my friends camping the following week. It's a week later, and I'm sitting on my screened porch that we have for our cats in the summer. I just got in a kitten and was playing with her, when I see a car that looks like the car that the guy drove. I brush it off until I see the same car drive by again, and again, and again, about 7 times in total. I think back and I realize that I talked about hanging out at a beach a lot, which was right across from my house. Now I'm terrified. My parents aren't home, and if he corners me, I'm in an enclosed room. The only access from the house was the window, which was very hard to open from the outside. After the second time, I ducked so I wasn't visible from the road, and started texting my friend. My friends pulled up and the car stopped coming by, and I hugged them, terrified of what could have happened. My mom and dad come home, and I don't say anything, but I basically forced myself into hanging around them and not being home alone for a few days. About 6 months later, this guy asked me on Facebook. I never once gave him my last name. He texted me saying I'm the most genuine and pretty girl he'd ever met, that when looking back on it, he compared every single girl he's met since, and I'm the top, and he's sorry. I don't think he knew I saw him stalking me. I basically said, that's cool, but don't talk to me again. He hasn't, fortunately. I swore off Tinder for a while, eventually using it far away from home at college. With a happy ending, I met my current boyfriend, so I got to learn some good things and bad things by using online dating apps. But to the guy from Tinder, let's not meet again. This happened over a year ago, so I'm safe now. I just broken up with my ex back in January 2019. I was angry at everything, and I had just joined Tinder. I talked to this guy that seemed pretty cool and was quite attractive. I talked to him for quite a bit, and eventually took a lift down to where he lived. Now, His dad had passed away not too long ago, so he moved back in with his mom to help out. I found that sweet, and so I thought nothing of it. We took a lift to Walmart and the liquor store, as his mom requested some wine. I had bought pizza to bake at their home to make a decent impression, and had purchased her wine, which she had given me cash for despite my protest. Again, trying to make a good impression. This home was gorgeous. They had an old-time wide jukebox, and the freaking sink taps in the bathroom were installed in the mirrors. Water flowed from the spout in the freaking mirrors. His mom was sweet as a southern tea and seemed to be taking a liking to me. So this guy had been messaging his lesbian best friend, Cynthia, and explained that he had helped her out after she broke her ankle and such. Again, I thought, what a nice guy. We drank, we had sex, everything was cool. I warned him that I had scars from previous cutting incidents, but nothing recent. He was fine with it and understood. The next morning, I had an interview with a major company call center, and his mom offered to drive me. Such a sweetheart. I did great in the interview and was offered the job. I immediately texted the guy, telling him the good news. So one day when I was home and had slept for about 8 hours, I wake up to a dozen text messages and over 20 Facebook messages from him. It started with, "Hey, how's it going?" But as I scrolled through the rest of the messages, they progressed to, "Those cut marks on your arm. Yeah, I would have never dated a cutter anyway. Most of them are fucking pathetic, that need to get serious fucking help. Might as well keep doing it, since it seems to be your only friend." What the actual fuck? I blocked him. Then I posted it to my Facebook page, so if anyone else knew him, they could see how he actually was. I get a friend request from his lesbian friend, Cynthia. She filled me in. She is not a lesbian. She had just broken up with him hours before befriending me, and he had told her that I was a lesbian. Also that he goes by his middle name. I had done a basic search with the name he provided me, and on his Facebook page, to make sure he wasn't a felon or some shit before meeting him. When I did the research on his first real name, sure as shit, so many charges, including child pornography. He had been stalking her, pinging her phone location, and messaging her shit like, "Oh what, you're not gonna leave your house?" And he told her to kill herself. She had gotten the cops involved. She sent me screenshots of the messages he was sending. We talked a bit more, and while I'm not in the medical profession, it's kinda clear something was wrong. He was a liar, manipulative, aggressive, angry, and obviously his moods flipped faster than mine. I offered to send her what I could of the messages in case she could use it to build a case against him. Shortly after, I get a friend request from a name I don't recognize, something generic like Mike. Then I get a message, "Hey, it's Jay. How's your new job going?" I was freaking out. He knew where I worked. The building was secure, but the parking lot not so much. I got pepper spray and called my dad, who has been in the police force since I've been alive. He advised to not carry a baseball bat because it could easily be wrestled from me and used against me, but pepper spray was a decent choice. Also, he said that while online bullying isn't something the police can do much about, if he messages me again, it goes into the harassment area and needs to be reported ASAP. I was getting off work after midnight and was scared shitless. I parked as close to the building as possible, pepper spray in hand. Fortunately, I haven't ran into him since, and I don't want to ever meet him again. I've also since moved and changed jobs. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. The story all happened in the last 3 weeks, and the final part hopefully just took place this morning. So to set the stage, I'm a single dad with a daughter who is about to turn 3. I don't really have time to hang out and meet people, so I decided to put myself out there, and I made a Tinder profile. I had a few decent dates, but nothing too special. Then, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I matched with a new person. She lived about 30 minutes from me and looked cute, so I messaged her. We start talking and she gives me her number. We text for a week or so, and things seemed great. We both seemed to be on the same page about things, and that neither of us wanted to rush into anything serious. So we decided to spend an evening together. The first evening went well, We got along great. We did the same thing a few days later, and again, everything went fine. But after about 2 weeks, it became clear that she wanted to start an actual relationship, and I wasn't ready to commit to that. I made it clear, and she seemed to understand and accept it. After some of the things she said though, I was seeing some red flags, and I wasn't sure if she was actually going to respect my wishes and not try to move things forward into a serious relationship. There were a number of things she said that made me think that she was a bit emotionally unstable, so I decided to take a few days to think about things and decide what I wanted to do. We had been texting at least a little bit every day, and I felt like the daily connection was not helping to convince her that I was serious when I said I wanted to take things slow and not jump into a relationship. So on Friday morning I was texting her, and then just kind of stopped replying. I didn't think much of it since I was really busy anyway. She came to my house that night, just showed up unannounced. I was polite and made up an excuse about my phone being broken. She claimed that she showed up because she was worried that something happened to me, since I always replied right away before. But her showing up at my house was another huge red flag. I figured the broken phone excuse would benefit me, giving me time to evaluate this new warning sign and decide what to do. I told her it was fine, but that I might be MIA for a bit longer until I get a new phone. I don't have internet connection either, so basically all contact with me would cease until I reinitiated. She seemed to be fine, apologizing for intruding on my evening, and left right away. So I didn't give it too much thought, other than reaffirming my concern that she might be becoming obsessed. In the next few days, she sent me messages basically checking to see if I got a new phone. There was nothing too crazy, but still worried me a bit, and with everything else, it told me that I needed to cut things off completely. That leads me to last night. It was 6 days since she showed up to my house, and I hadn't contacted her so far. I was hoping that my silence would send a message, or maybe she would forget about me and move on with someone else, but that didn't happen. I went to sleep around midnight and woke up at 6 a.m. Upon looking at my phone, I saw literally 15 notifications, 6 missed calls, and a voicemail. The text message started off saying, "I know that you're probably asleep, but I saw that you accepted a friend request 2 days ago, so I wanted to know why you've been ignoring me." And then it went to pleading for me to answer my phone, and finished with, "If you won't talk to me, I'm going to come to your house." This whole thing took place between 1 and 2 a.m. The voicemail was just her sobbing on the phone and screaming, "Why are you doing this to me?" Keep in mind, I've known this girl for less than a month, and we've been on 2 dates in that whole time. At this point, I'm pretty freaked out, so I call a friend of mine asking for advice. My friend told me to just be blunt and tell her that threatening to come to my house in the middle of the night was completely inappropriate, that she's acting crazy, and to not contact me again. So here I am this morning, after sending a long text, kindly but firmly telling her that her behavior wasn't acceptable and that I did not want her to contact me again. So crazy Tinder girl, let's not meet again.